It started with a smell. Not a strong one, just faint enough to make you question whether it was there at all. Like the scent of something sweet turning sour. Or like old water sitting too long in a wooden bowl. I noticed it first during the third week after I moved in. The house was a small, single-story cottage-style home built sometime in the early 40s. It had that charm, the kind you only see on cold autumn mornings when the fog clings to the shingles and you feel like you're stepping into a storybook. I'd been living in the city for over a decade, buried in noise, light, and stress, and the quiet out here was a kind of magic. That's what I thought at first. My name is Evan Rains. I'm 37 now, but at the time, I had just turned 35. I'd left behind a 6-year job in technical writing, a broken engagement, and more anxiety than I care to admit. I wanted quiet. I wanted to rebuild. And for a while, that's what I had. The house had been vacant for 2 years before I bought it. The previous owner, a man named James Penbrook, had passed away from what the real estate agent described as natural causes. He was elderly, lived alone, and, according to the sparse information I could find, had few visitors. There was a minor water damage issue in the living room ceiling from a previous winter storm, but the inspection had cleared everything else. I moved in mid-April. By early May, I noticed it. It wasn't the smell at first, not directly. It was the way the air felt in the living room. Thicker, like humidity, but not quite. I'd be sitting on the couch reading or watching something, and I'd catch myself wiping my palms on my jeans or rubbing my arms. It felt like someone had opened a window in a different room and the pressure was off. Then came the smell. It came from the corner of the living room, where the fireplace met the far wall. The stonework was original, and the plaster wall to the right of it was painted an off-white, the kind that turns a little yellow with time. At first, I thought maybe something had crawled into the walls and died. That's what it smelled like. Not rotten exactly, but spoiled, damp, organic. I scrubbed the wall. Twice. I bought heavy-duty mold cleaner and sprayed every inch. Nothing looked wrong, until I noticed the smudge. It wasn't there before. I'm sure of it. It was about the size of a grapefruit. Faint, a sort of grayish-brown discoloration, like a water stain that had dried unevenly. But there had been no leak. I touched it. The wall was dry. I called in a contractor friend, Mark, to take a look. He brought his moisture detector, ran it over the area, and found nothing. He even poked a small hole near the baseboard to check behind the drywall. Still dry. No pests. No mildew. Nothing. You're fine, he said. Walls age weird sometimes, especially old plaster. Could be from the fireplace. I nodded, but something gnawed at the back of my brain. That night, I had a dream. I was lying in bed, the sheets pulled tight around me, and the room was freezing. I couldn't move. There was a noise, faint, like a child whimpering, and then I saw something shifting on the wall across from me. A shape, elongated, reaching. It looked like a stain. It moved like oil through water, spreading. When I woke up, the smell was stronger. I walked straight into the living room, still in my t-shirt and boxers, and I saw it. The stain. It had grown. Now the size of a dinner plate. It was darker than before, almost rust-colored. And it wasn't a round shape anymore. It was stretching upward, thin tendrils branching toward the ceiling like fingers. I stood there for a full 5 minutes, just staring at it. I took pictures. I compared them to ones I'd taken during the move-in. Definitely not there before. I tried cleaning it again. Bleached this time. Scrubbed until my fingers ached. Nothing. The stain remained. That night, I started hearing things. Not loud, just quiet enough that I wasn't sure if I imagined them. A soft brushing sound, like fabric dragging across wood. Once I heard what I swore was whispering, but too faint to make out words. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom and took to the couch. I told myself it was temporary. One morning, I woke up to find the smell stronger than ever, pungent and bitter. My eyes watered. I went straight to the stain. It had grown again. Now several feet tall, it stretched upward along the wall, twisting at an angle. There were patterns now. Marks, scratches, tiny indentations that looked like symbols etched in rust. I touched it again, why, I don't know, and it felt warm. Not room temperature. Warm. I pulled my hand back and stared at my fingers. They smelled like copper. That day, I tried to scrape the stain off with a putty knife. It didn't work. The blade scraped the surface, but the color remained embedded in the plaster like it was a part of the wall. I went to town that afternoon, stopped by the local library to ask about the house. The woman at the desk, a woman named Carol, looked up some property records for me. She was quiet for a long time before she spoke. "This house," she said slowly, "has been bought and sold more than any other on that street. Every few years, someone new." I asked her about the Pembroke guy. She hesitated. Then she said something I'll never forget. His body wasn't found in the bedroom or the kitchen. It was in the living room, right where the stain is now. I asked what happened. They said his heart gave out. But the coroner's report noted something odd. His fingernails were worn down, almost torn, like he'd been scratching at the floor or the walls. I thanked her and left quickly. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the couch with the lights on, staring at the stain. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard the first knock. Not on the door, on the wall, just above the stain. 3 knocks. Slow, measured. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then silence. But the wall was wet. I didn't sleep the night. I found the stain creeping down from the ceiling. The moment I turned off the lights, something in the room felt wrong. Not just eerie, but fundamentally off, as though reality itself had grown tired of playing fair. The house was silent, except for the occasional creak, normal in any old structure, I told myself. But those creaks had a rhythm, a purposeful, almost breathing rhythm. I lay there for hours, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, watching the shadows shift with every passing second. The moonlight sliced through the blinds and landed right on the wall where the stain had first appeared. And even in the dark, I could tell it had changed again. At dawn, I finally got up and turned on the light. What I saw made my chest tighten. The stain had doubled in size. It now stretched from the top corner of the wall to nearly halfway down, like a dark tendril of mold or soot. The edges weren't jagged or water damaged. They were smooth, organic, and something about it suggested depth, as though if you reached into the stain, your hand might sink into another place entirely. I did what any half-rational person might do. I cleaned it. Scrubbing didn't help. Bleach? Nothing. Not even a chemical burn on the surface. It didn't smear. It didn't budge. It simply sat there like it had been painted into the fabric of the wall itself. That's when the dream started. At first, there were fragments, soft weeping from the corner of the room, the image of the wall breathing in and out, the faint suggestion of something pressing against the other side of the plaster. I woke up each morning with a weight in my chest and a foul taste in my mouth, like I'd swallowed something rotten in my sleep. The third night, the dream became a memory. I was a child again, sitting in the old guest bedroom of my grandmother's house. I remembered the smell of lavender and old wood, the way sunlight poured through lace curtains, and the small frame painting above the bed, a simple pastoral landscape. Only in the dream, the painting had been replaced. Instead of trees and a cottage, it showed a black wall covered in that same stain, except larger, more aggressive, like it had erupted across the surface in violent strokes. There was something in the foreground, too. Something that looked almost human, crawling. I woke up screaming. I couldn't stay there alone anymore. So I called my sister, Lucy. Lucy and I hadn't spoken much since the funeral. Our mother's passing had left a rift between us. Grief does that sometimes. Still, when I told her I needed help, she didn't hesitate. By evening, she was knocking on my door, arms folded, eyes full of concern. "You look like hell," she said. "I haven't slept." She followed me inside, took one look at the stain, and immediately stepped back. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know. It doesn't come off. It's getting worse." We stared at the wall in silence for a long time. "You need to get someone in here. A contractor, a priest, I don't know." She forced a laugh that didn't quite land. "It looks like something out of one of those found footage horror movies. I've tried everything. Bleach, paint. It just comes back." Lucy moved closer, examining the edges of the stain. "Have you tried cutting into the wall?" That hadn't occurred to me. So that night we did. I brought out a utility knife and sliced into the plaster along the edge of the stain. The wall crumbled easily, but what lay beneath wasn't insulation or wood framing. It was another wall, black, smooth, featureless. Lucy backed up. "That's not normal. That's not possible." We stared at it in silence. I ran my fingers across the surface. It was cold. Too cold. "I'm calling someone tomorrow," I whispered. "Good," Lucy said, but her voice shook. We covered the hole and tried to forget about it for the night. But that wall didn't want to be forgotten. That night, Lucy screamed in her sleep. I ran to her room and found her sitting upright in bed, shaking, her face pale as paper. "There was someone in the room," she whispered, "standing by the stain. Just standing there, staring. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing. But when I came back, the door to the bedroom was closed. And I knew I hadn't closed it. This wasn't just a stain. It was a wound, a door, and something was watching from the other side." Lucy didn't stay the next night. She claimed she had an emergency at work, but we both knew it was a lie. After what happened with the hole in the wall, the dreams, the shadowy figure she swore stood by the stain. She couldn't take it. And honestly, neither could I. But the difference was I couldn't leave. I didn't know why, but I felt rooted to that house, like if I walked away now, something worse would happen. Something would follow. The night after she left, I slept with all the lights on. It didn't help. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up gasping. My ears were ringing like I'd been underwater. And the house was vibrating, not shaking like an earthquake, more like humming. A low, deep resonance that came from inside the walls. I sat up, and immediately I knew the stain had changed again. I didn't want to look. Every part of me resisted, but I did. And what I saw destroyed whatever I had left of peace. It had grown down to the floor. And not just that, it had opened. The center of the black mass had cracked, just slightly, like the start of a mouth spreading. No light came from within, just darkness. The kind of darkness that felt hungry. That was the night I began to hear the breathing. It came from inside the wall. When I pressed my ear to the drywall, I heard its slow, damp, raspy inhales and exhales. Like something wet and sick was hiding in there, just inches beyond the surface. Waiting. I moved to a hotel the next day. I didn't sleep there. I didn't pack. I just left. But when I checked in and walked to my room, my legs began to itch. Badly. I pulled up my jeans in the hallway and saw it. Streaks of black residue on the back of my calves, like smudges of soot or ink. I rushed to the bathroom and scrubbed my legs raw under scalding water. But even as the skin turned red, even as the soap foamed pink with blood, I could still see it. The faint outline of something like veins growing under the surface. That night in the hotel, I didn't sleep either. Every time I began to drift off, I saw the stain in my mind. It wasn't just on the wall anymore. It was behind my eyelids, spreading, consuming. I called Lucy in the middle of the night. "Have you been having dreams again?" I asked. A pause. "Yes." "About the wall?" "No." "About under the wall." That stopped me cold. I didn't speak, so she continued. "In the dream, I'm standing in front of it, and the wall opens, like it's breathing, and then it parts like a curtain. And behind it, there's something hanging. What is it?" She went silent for so long, I thought she'd hung up. Then she whispered, "It looks like you, but the skin is missing." I should have never gone back. But something in me, that same unspoken tether that kept pulling me toward the house, wouldn't let go. I drove home 2 days later. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw something in the upstairs window. Not a person. Not exactly. Just a figure. Slightly shorter than me, with long arms and a slight lean forward, as if it were waiting, perched. It moved away the moment I looked at it. I sat in the car for over an hour before stepping inside. I left every light on. My hand shook on the doorknob. And when I stepped back into the living room, I saw that the stain had nearly consumed the entire wall. It had roots now. Black strands had stretched out along the carpet like spilled ink. But worse, there were marks in the stain. Lines. Scratches. Like fingernail grooves running down the center, as if someone inside was trying to claw their way out. I didn't sleep that night either. At around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not creaks. Not pipes. Actual steps. Upstairs. One after another. Then a long pause. Then again, closer this time. I grabbed the flashlight and crept up the staircase. Each step felt like it might give out. The air was heavier up there, like I was climbing into something alive. At the top of the stairs, I turned toward the guest room, and the door was ajar. It had been closed when I left. I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the wood, something banged from the inside. A single loud, flat-palmed strike against the door like something on the other side wanted out. I fell backwards, hard in my throat, and scrambled down the stairs. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I moved into a friend's apartment for the week. Told them it was mold. Didn't go into details. But I couldn't stay there either. I saw shadows out of the corner of my eye, even in the mirror. Once when I was showering, I felt a draft, even though the windows were closed. And when I opened my eyes, a single black smear was running down the bathroom tile. That was when I realized something horrifying. It had followed me. The stain, or whatever lived inside it. It had attached to me. I didn't know what to do. I was too ashamed to talk to anyone. Too afraid I was going insane. I started documenting everything. Videos, photos, journals. None of them came out right. The pictures came out blurry, corrupted. Audio was filled with static or whispers I hadn't heard in the room. Every time I tried to record the stain, the file would corrupt. My laptop began to crash when I opened any of them. And then, one night, I came home to my friend's apartment. and the wall across from their couch had a small, black dot, the size of a dime. Fresh, oily, familiar. The stain had found a new wall. I hadn't left the house in almost 2 weeks. My body ached from disuse, and my skin had become clammy and pale, but my eyes were constantly drawn to the stain. It had taken on the quality of a living thing, not just in its growth, which now spread across the entire living room wall, thick and veined like a tumor, but in how it seemed to watch me. Yes, I know how that sounds, but I swear it was observing me, growing more when I looked away, pulsing with a subtle rhythm like a breath. I'd stopped using the living room. Every time I passed by the doorway, I kept my head low, avoiding its presence like one avoids eye contact with something dangerous on the street. Still, I could hear it. A low hum, a faint sound of moisture, like dripping from inside a damp cave. And the dreams. Or were they dreams? They were so vivid. I would wake up with the sensation of something brushing against my legs under the covers. Something cold, soft like wet cloth, and I'd always jolt upright to find the room empty, though I could feel the residual presence of something retreating. It was no longer just the wall. The stain had started to appear in other places, small blotches in the hallway, the corner of the bathroom mirror, and most disturbingly, in the old family portrait above the fireplace. At first it looked like a smudge, but soon it overtook the faces one by one. My mother's features dissolved first, then my sister's. I watched it eat away at them each day, leaving only black, glossy voids where their eyes used to be. I tried cleaning it, bleach, scrubbing, even sanding down the wall. Nothing helped. If anything, it came back more vibrant, more aggressive. I bought buckets of white paint and coated every inch of the living room wall, sealing the stain beneath several thick layers. I went to bed that night, exhausted but hopeful. The next morning, the paint had peeled itself off, not chipped or cracked. It lay on the floor in large, curled sheets, like skin sloughed from a corpse. And there it was, the stain, darker and larger than before, rising in ridges and streaks as though in protest. I recorded everything, every sound, every growth, every shift in temperature. I installed motion-sensitive cameras facing the wall, hoping to capture its change in real time. But whenever I reviewed the footage, the wall appeared perfectly normal. Clean, white, no stain at all. That was when I began to question my sanity. I called my friend Richard, the only person I trusted enough to tell. He was a practical man, skeptical of the supernatural. When he arrived, I warned him not to laugh. He didn't laugh. He stared at the wall with a blank expression, then turned to me. "There's nothing there," he said. "It's just a normal wall." I nearly screamed. I grabbed his arm and pointed at the thick, spreading veins of black and red that crawled across the plaster, but he only shook his head. "Maybe you need help," he said softly. "Maybe you should take a break from this place." He left that evening, and I never heard from him again. 2 days later, I received a voicemail. It was just heavy breathing and a soft, distant whisper that I couldn't make out until I listened closely. It repeated a single word over and over underneath. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up with the hallway light on, staring at the wall, heart pounding. Underneath. What was under the wall? The idea wormed into my brain like a parasite. I fetched a hammer and began knocking gently at the stain. It echoed differently than the rest of the wall. Hollow. I kept hammering until the plaster crumbled. Behind it, I found nothing but darkness. A cavity, not part of the blueprint. A hidden space. I widened the hole and shined a flashlight inside. The air that blew out was fetid, warm, and smelled of rot. The cavity led into a cramped passage. Against every screaming instinct, I climbed in. The crawl space extended deeper than it should have. It twisted downward impossibly long, far longer than my house could physically contain. The smell worsened. The walls were lined with old, shredded cloth, wet and sticky, and under my hands, I could feel more of that same material that had stained my living room wall. My flashlight flickered. Then I heard it, rustling, not from behind me, but ahead, somewhere in the blackness. Not wind, not rats. The unmistakable sound of cloth dragging over wood. Then, low and close, a whisper that didn't come from my ears, but directly into my mind. You see it now. I scrambled backwards, scraping my arms and knees on the jagged passage, and burst into the living room. The wall had sealed itself. Not visibly repaired, just gone. The hole, the stain, everything. The wall stood white and clean, like none of it had happened. But it had, because in my hand, still clenched from the crawl space, was a scrap of fabric. It was damp, warm, and covered in something that looked and smelled like old blood. That night, I burned the cloth. The smell filled the house for hours, like wet soil and iron. But the next morning, the stain returned. Not just on the wall, but on the ceiling, the floor, the mirror. Growing, breathing, reaching, and now I hear it every night. That soft rustling behind the walls. Moving closer, I sleep with my back to the door, afraid to look. Afraid that the moment I see it again, it'll never stop growing. I never intended to return to that house. After the events of the previous weeks, the stain's relentless spread, the whispers in the walls, the dreams that felt more like memories, I had resolved to leave it all behind. But some things don't let go so easily. It began with the dreams again. Not the disjointed, surreal images of before, but vivid, coherent scenes. I was back in the house, standing before the wall where the stain had first appeared. Only now, the wall was gone, replaced by a gaping void that pulsed with a dark, viscous substance. From within, I could hear a heartbeat. Not mine, but something deeper, more primal. Each night, the dream progressed. I would step closer to the void, feeling its pull, until I was on the brink of entering. Then I would wake, drenched in sweat, the echo of that heartbeat still resonating in my ears. I tried everything to stop the dreams, sleep aids, therapy, even staying awake for days, but nothing worked. The house was calling me back. Against my better judgment, I returned. The neighborhood was unchanged, eerily so. Children played in yards. Neighbors tended to gardens, all oblivious to the malevolence that lurked within my home. As I approached, I noticed the front door was ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something metallic. The living room was untouched, save for the wall. The stain had consumed it entirely, forming a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to breathe. Drawn by a force I couldn't resist, I stepped closer. The surface of the stain rippled, and from its depths, a hand emerged, pale, elongated fingers reaching out. I should have run, screamed, done anything but stand there. But I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot as the hand grasped my arm. Pain shot through me as the hand pulled me into the wall. Darkness enveloped me, and I felt myself falling, tumbling through an abyss devoid of light or sound. When I awoke, I was in a room, a mirror image of my living room, but distorted. The walls pulsed with a sickly glow, and the air was filled with whispers. Figures moved in the periphery of my vision, always just out of sight. I wandered the house, each room revealing more horrors. In the kitchen, the appliances were covered in rust and blood. The dining room table was set for a meal, but the plates held rotting flesh. Upstairs, the bedrooms were filled with decaying mannequins, their faces twisted into expressions of agony. In the master bedroom, I found a mirror. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't me. The figure had my face, but its eyes were hollow, its skin cracked and bleeding. It smiled, and I felt a searing pain in my chest. I collapsed, and the world around me dissolved. I awoke in a hospital bed, monitors beeping around me. A nurse entered, surprised to see me conscious. She explained that I'd been found unconscious in my home, suffering from severe dehydration and malnutrition. I had been in a coma for weeks. They said there was no sign of any stain on the wall, no evidence of the horrors I had witnessed. The house was clean, untouched. But I know the truth. The stain is still there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting. And every night, I hear the heartbeat calling me back.